Yerahapura copyable text, direct chat main. My manager banned overtime on a Friday afternoon and told everyone to leave at exactly 5 o'clock no matter what. 3 hours later the entire warehouse shut down, trucks were stuck outside the gate, and corporate was calling his phone every 4 minutes asking why nothing was moving. He caused it himself, and I watched it happen from my car in the parking lot with a smile on my face. I worked at a regional distribution center for a major retail chain, the kind of place that ships thousands of packages every single night so people can get their orders the next morning. For 2 years I stayed late almost every shift, sometimes an extra hour, sometimes 3, because the work had to get done and nobody else wanted to stay. I never complained. I liked my job. I liked the people I worked with. The only person I never liked was my manager, a man named Gary who had been promoted 6 months earlier and suddenly acted like he owned the building. To understand why this happened, you have to understand Gary. Before his promotion, Gary was just another guy on the floor, someone who barely made his numbers and constantly asked other people to cover his mistakes. The moment he got that manager title, something in him changed completely. He started talking down to people who had trained him. He started writing people up for tiny things that had never mattered before, just to prove he was in charge. Everyone assumed it was just a phase that would pass. Gary decided that overtime was making him look bad to his bosses. He wanted to show corporate that he could run a tighter, more efficient team without paying extra hours. So he called a meeting on a Thursday and announced a new rule. Nobody, under any circumstance, was allowed to stay past their scheduled shift. Clock out at 5, he said, no exceptions, no negotiations. If your work is not done, that is a scheduling problem, not an overtime problem. Everyone in that meeting knew this was a disaster waiting to happen. Our shift lead, a woman named Denise who had been there for 11 years, tried to explain that the nightly truck schedule depended on us finishing the loading process before the trucks arrived. Gary cut her off. He said rules are rules and if the trucks have to wait, the trucks can wait. I remember looking around the room and seeing everyone go quiet. Nobody argued after that. We all just nodded and went back to our stations. But I noticed something in Denise's eyes. She was not angry. She was almost amused. Like she already knew how this story was going to end. The next day was a normal Friday. We had 4 trucks scheduled to arrive between 6 and 8 in the evening, and normally we would push through until everything was loaded, even if it meant staying until 9 or 10 at night. Not this time. At exactly 5 o'clock, I clocked out. So did everyone else. Gary stood by the exit watching us leave like a proud little king, checking his watch, nodding at each of us as if he had just won some kind of prize. Denise walked past him and said, "Have a good night, boss," in the sweetest voice I have ever heard. He smiled and said, "Good, this is how it should be, efficient and disciplined." None of us said a single word about the 3 pallets that were only half loaded. None of us mentioned that only 2 of the 4 trucks were ready. We just walked out, exactly like he told us to, exactly on time, exactly following his brand new rule. I sat in my car for a minute before driving off, mostly because I was curious. I wanted to see what would happen next. Around 6:15, the first truck driver arrived and started calling the warehouse office because nobody was there to help him unload the return pallets or check him in properly. Gary was the only supervisor left on site, and he had never actually worked the loading dock himself in his entire time at the company. By 6:30, the second truck showed up. Then the third. Drivers were parked outside the gate, engines idling, logging their wait time on official company forms, because truck drivers get paid for detention time and they are required to document every single minute they sit around waiting. Gary tried calling a few of us to come back and help. I did not answer. Denise did not answer. Nobody answered, because the new policy specifically said clock out at 5, no exceptions, and if we came back in, we would technically be violating the very rule Gary had forced everyone to follow under threat of write-ups. One driver, a heavy-set man named Ronnie who had been delivering to our warehouse for years, actually walked up to the front office window and asked where everybody went. The security guard, a part-time college kid named Marcus, told him the entire evening crew had been ordered to leave at 5 sharp and nobody was allowed to stay past that. Ronnie laughed so hard he had to lean on the wall. He said in 15 years of driving trucks he had never seen a warehouse empty itself out on a Friday during peak season, and that somebody upstairs was about to have a very bad night. By 7 o'clock, corporate started calling Gary directly, because 3 trucks were sitting outside a major distribution hub completely idle, drivers were burning detention hours which cost the company real money, and the entire overnight delivery schedule for 2 states was falling apart. Gary tried to explain that he told his team to go home on time. His regional director asked him why he would do something so obviously stupid during peak shipping season. Gary did not have a good answer, because there was not one. He ended up staying at the warehouse until nearly 1 in the morning by himself, trying to load pallets he did not know how to load, trying to operate machinery he was not certified to operate, and eventually having to call in emergency staff from another location 2 hours away just to get the trucks moving. Those emergency workers got paid overtime, plus a shift differential, plus mileage reimbursement, which ended up costing the company almost 4 times what our regular overtime would have cost that single night. The next morning, every single one of us came in for our normal shift, right on time, well rested, having followed every rule exactly as written. Gary looked like he had not slept at all. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were red, and he did not say a single word to anyone for the first 2 hours of the shift. Around 10 in the morning, Denise got called into the regional director's office. I found out later that instead of getting in trouble, she was asked to explain exactly what happened the night before. She told them the truth. She said Gary gave a direct order, everyone followed it precisely, and nobody deviated from company policy in any way. She reminded them that if leadership wants employees to use judgment instead of following strict rules, that expectation needs to come from leadership, not from employees guessing what their manager actually meant. The regional director apparently agreed with her completely. 2 days later, Gary was moved to a different position, something in inventory auditing, a role with significantly less authority and, from what I heard, significantly less pay. The new overtime ban policy was quietly reversed by the end of that same week, replaced with a much more reasonable rule that allowed supervisors to authorize limited overtime whenever truck schedules required it. Denise ended up getting temporary authority over evening operations, and a few weeks later that became permanent, along with a nice raise. I got a small bump in pay too, along with genuine respect from upper management once they understood how the whole situation actually unfolded. What still makes me laugh, even now, is that nobody on our team ever broke a single rule. We did not sabotage anything. We did not lie to anyone. We did not even raise our voices. We simply did exactly what our manager told us to do, word for word, down to the very last detail. Gary wrote the rule. Gary enforced the rule. Gary stood by the door and personally watched every one of us follow that rule to the letter. He just never stopped to think about what would happen once we actually did. Months later, people still bring up that Friday night whenever someone new joins the team, telling it like a piece of warehouse legend, complete with the image of 3 trucks lined up outside the gate while one exhausted manager tried to run the entire operation alone. It has become the story every new hire hears in their first week, a quiet warning that rules written in anger rarely survive reality. Sometimes the most powerful form of protest is not refusing to follow instructions. It's following them so perfectly, so completely, so exactly as written, that the person who wrote them finally has to face the consequences of their own decision, all by themselves, with absolutely nobody left to blame.